I'm going to be brief in starting off. I'm looking forward to your questions. I just want to run through 10 or so highlights of our citizenship, immigration, and passport reforms over the past 4 years since the last election. We are going into an election campaign soon, and so it's important to take stock of where we have come and what we have achieved together, because the benefits of these reforms really are relevant to every Canadian, to those who are permanent residents, to those who are new citizens, to those who've been here longer. And I'll start with reform to the asylum system. Think back 10 years ago, think back even 4 or 5 years ago, to the way our system was going. Very long lead times to hearings before the Immigration Review Board. Increasingly, large numbers of successful claimants, and claimants coming from safe, middle or high income countries. At one point we had 4 or 5 of the top source countries for asylum claimants to Canada were either members of the EU or Mexico, or other NAFTA partners. Even the United States was prominent at one time. After the reforms, much faster hearings, much better service, and a renewed focus on those from countries that are truly facing some of the worst circumstances in the world. Countries like Somalia, South Sudan, other conflict affected countries in Africa, and above all, Iraq, Syria, Pakistan, Afghanistan, where conflicts that we know all too well, because of the devastation of terrorism in the world today, are still producing large numbers of migrants and internally displaced people. Second point, refugee resettlement. In addition to being the most generous country in the world in terms of our asylum system, and we are recognized as such by many independent observers, we are resettling larger numbers of refugees to Canada this year than we were 4 years ago, and focusing that effort on the needs of religious, ethnic minorities, and others facing persecution, fleeing for their very lives from Iraq and Syria. And we have made a commitment that is close to 40,000 for the resettlement of Iraqis and Syrians. More than half of that number has already been achieved, largely thanks to our very large-scale effort in Iraq. We've scaled up the Syrian effort, and the response of Canadians as private sponsors, as settlement agencies, has been very generous so far. And we are the only country to have made such a large commitment to refugees from both Syria and Iraq over several years, and to be implementing it according to plan, and with all the generosity and all the principle for which Canada is rightly known. Thirdly, we have renewed our commitment to reuniting families. We have been, through our family class immigration programs, admitting from 10 to 20,000 more family members, sponsored spouses, parents and grandparents, dependent children per year than was the case under previous Liberal governments on average. And with our action plan for faster family reunification, we've seen the numbers of parents and grandparents this year and in 2 previous years really move much higher. We will be close to admitting 75,000 parents and grandparents in only 3 years, in addition to a super visa, which has proven very popular. We just saw the 50,000 issuance number reached a couple of months ago for super visas in only 3 years. We are also welcoming record numbers of visitors and tourists to Canada from large markets like Brazil, India, China, and many other countries. You see the vast majority of visitors now receiving 10-year multiple entry visas, which tends to accelerate their travel to Canada. And you are seeing enormous growth on every continent of the number of visitors coming to Canada, both to visit family members or to do business, and obviously to come as tourists. And the contribution to Canada's bottom line of all of these visits, for the Pan Am Games or any other occasion, is direct, economically significant. We also have seen record numbers of students. We have almost doubled the number of international students in Canada over the last 9 years, and that growth has been even more dramatic in the last 4 years. To give you one example, we went from having 29,000 new Chinese international students coming to Canada in 2013 to having 64,000 last year. And we've had similar double-digit increases from Latin America, again from India, from other countries in Asia, and from Europe, where the quality of Canadian education is better known than ever before. We've also been working hard to protect people in our immigration system. The Zero Tolerance for Barbaric Practices Act, which Costa was instrumental in bringing through Parliament, has now received royal assent and is the law of the land. That means it is much harder, and it should be impossible, to engage in forced marriage in Canada or to use our immigration system to, for the purposes of subjecting a young man or a young woman to forced marriage. Underage marriage, unacceptable. Sponsorship of spouses under 18 through the immigration system, no longer possible. Polygamy, we'll be taking a much harder look at those who've tried to literally dissimulate the real nature of their relationships with family members, so that polygamy is no longer a reality in Canada. It has been a crime for over a century. Now it will no longer be run in through the back door through our immigration system. We are also extremely proud of the efforts we've made to protect the Canadian passport, to make sure that we have the best security features, a chip now that has that basic page 3 information on it, quality of paper, whole range of security features that are literally the best in class in the world. And then also a passport that can be valid if you choose this version of it for 10 years, and it is more affordable, more cheaper than ever before. That has meant that the current 10-year e-passport on offer from Passport Canada is the most popular passport we've ever had. And we've seen literally millions being issued to Canadians as a result of that. We also have brought in Express Entry, a new, faster framework for economic immigration. The programs don't change. Federal skilled workers, federal skilled trades with lower backlogs or no backlogs are still the main channels. The Canadian Experience Class has grown enormously, but as of January 1st, as you know, we are inviting those who score highest on our point system to apply and processing their applications in record times, 6 months or less for 80% of applicants. And I have personally met some people whose applications were, and perhaps you have as well, processed in as little as 2 weeks. So we've shown what we're capable of, and Express Entry is truly a new era for Canadian immigration. We reformed the caregiver program. Again, a big backlog, an unfortunate backlog, separation of families for those who were working so hard in Canada in such important roles that would often last a decade. And now we've pledged to work through this backlog in 2 years and to broaden the range of occupations available to caregivers, to ensure we're attracting caregivers for high needs medical patients, those who need care at home or in institutions that is a bit more specialized than we've seen in the past, as well as ensuring families can get the care that they need for children or for loved ones. There are huge opportunities, unprecedented opportunities there now for caregivers, and the weight separation from family is going going down from up to 10 years to 3 years, because after 2 years of working in temporary capacity, we will be processing caregivers at the same pace as we are processing applications under Express Entry in 6 months or less. Finally, to close off, I would be remiss not to mention citizenship and all of the pride that Canadians rightly take in being Canadian, in being able to vote, in having that passport. We sense it during the Pan Am Games, we sense it in this room, and this is the most active office for citizenship anywhere in Canada, and I think even for this very busy office, these have been the most busy 18 months ever, because thanks to Bill C-24, we will very soon not have a backlog of citizenship applications. We have made 262,000 new Canadians citizens in 2014 alone. That very high pace of production continues in 2015. And at the same time, we've been very clear what the requirements are for citizenship: knowledge, language, residency, 4 years out of 6, and what the circumstances are under which citizenship can be revoked. We have long had the ability to revoke it for fraud, for misrepresentation. We have done dozens of such revocations in recent years. Those measures were actually brought in by Liberal governments. And we have simply added the provision for revocation based on convictions for terrorism, treason, espionage, crimes that very few Canadians commit, but crimes that are serious enough to call into question one's allegiance to Canada. Crimes that most Canadians see as incompatible with the values of Canadian citizenship. And that measure, as everything we've tried to do, is there both to show how generous we are. There is no country in the world that naturalizes, that offers citizenship to so many immigrants. And our immigration numbers are at record levels in Canadian history. But we can only do that when the rules are clear and when the scope for abuse is reduced to the bare minimum, 0 if we can achieve it. Finally, we've tried to innovate in our immigration programs. We have a startup visa for entrepreneurs, unique in the world. We are undertaking unprecedented measures with partners across the country to attract francophones to Canada. We are attracting investors to put their resources into the venture capital sector, which is so important for the GTA and for all of Canada. And we are committed to being the country in the world that is the most agile, that is the most responsive, that is the most prepared to adjust its immigration programs to suit the needs of a changing economy, a strong economy, but an economy that depends on the quality of its workforce, on the quality of the talent that we can attract from around the world, and of course, educate, train, and develop within our own borders. So this, I think, has been an area of strength for the Government of Canada under Prime Minister Stephen Harper over 9 years, particularly over the last 4 years, when we've been able to move forward with such an ambitious reform agenda. We look forward to working on it more with you down the road, but in the meantime, I'm open to your questions. Thank you.